Transportation, Energy and Utilities Committee at 5:30 sharp. And I'll entertain a motion on our agenda tonight.
And move the agenda as proposed.
Second. Any discussion? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Next, adoption of our minutes from our two prior meetings, May 23rd and June 11th. I'll take a motion on adoption of the minutes.
I would move if anybody has a problem with moving them both at the same time. I would move them both, otherwise I can do it singly, it doesn't matter to me. Or both, because I don't have any changes.
I second his moving with both.
Discussion? None? All those in favor? Also passes unanimously. Next is our public forum. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the TEUC? Okay.
Do you just talk to here?
You can join us at the table, Celia, and you can take your name for the record.
That way to make sure you're
comfortable signing you in.
now you do.
My name is Julia Hondel. I'm a resident of Ward 4 here in Burlington, and I just wanted to talk about the Cherry Street, Bank Street concept. I saw in the design that they're not adding bike lanes, and I think that that's only going to become a safety issue with more people, especially in spring and summer biking. That while it might not be an issue right after construction finishes, it may become a long-term issue. And while Burlington already has a public safety issue, we don't need to be stretching Burlington's resources on what could be a very minor fix and just adding a bike lane to prevent more injuries.
Thank you. And next, I guess we have.
Thanks, Julia.
Hello again, my name is Brian Nick, downtown resident, and I just have a comment tonight on also the Cherry and Bank Street concept redevelopment, and I would strongly encourage the committee to consider some sort of public safety kiosk component where BPD, the CSOs and the CSLs, Howard Center Street Outreach can have a place to sort of be downtown, you know, sort of a main point of contact, a main hub of public safety, because as we know, downtown has been challenging as of late. And I think now that we have an opportunity to sort of reimagine both of these streets in the area, it would be a fantastic opportunity to, you know, consider how we can improve public safety downtown as well. So thank you.
That's right. Seeing nobody else in the room, looks like we have a couple people online. First, Pike Porter, go ahead, Pike.
Good evening. I see that you are looking at a future agenda item for your meetings. I'd like to suggest two. One being McNeil and its finances. Earlier this week, I sent you a couple of documents. One indicating that Great River Hydro is selling power to GMT at $47 a megawatt hour. Earlier this month, a city councilor who's there today suggested that it would cost more to replace McNeil. McNeil is currently generating power at about $98 a megawatt hour. I asked BED for documentation from its website that suggests that it would be more expensive to replace it. And they bizarrely sent me a document that suggested that they are pricing replacement power for McNeil at $296 a megawatt hour, which is just crazy. There's, you know, no one pays that, and that's not what the IS New England grid averages for pricing, which is right now about $60 a megawatt hour. So the short story is, I think one agenda item should be a clear understanding of the finances of McNeil so that we can begin looking for alternatives. Another agenda item would be along similar lines, a financial feasibility study of returning housing to the Chamberlain neighborhood in South Burlington. I think the TEUC should take the lead on addressing our congressional delegation, who have the power, as we've seen with our F-35s currently, have the power to find us a different mission, a transport mission or some other mission. I think if you do a cost benefit analysis, you would see that it would actually be a cost benefit to replace and be able to build housing on those 44 acres. And then my final comment, I wasn't aware that people are planning on reconnecting Bank and Sherry without a bike lane. Of course, in this day and age, we need bike lanes everywhere. So I would support the comment that we heard earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Next, looks like we have Ashley Adams. Whoops. Go ahead, Ashley.
I'm so sorry. Good evening, counselors. I understand that you'll be discussing agenda planning for the TEUC, and I think that there's really no matter of greater importance than taking steps to shut down the McNeil generating plant. It runs half the time, and yet it's the largest single source of carbon pollution and other toxic pollutants in the state. So I would respectfully ask that you add shutdown of McNeil and start digging into that process to your near-term agenda. And the first step that you could take is planning for an independent third-party analysis of the McNeil plant that would examine the economic viability, and it would identify alternatives for Burlington's energy portfolio. Laudable goal, not that we need alternatives, but nonetheless, I think we need to look at alternatives, and Burlington Electric has failed to do this. I think that the analysis should be commissioned by the TEUC, not by Burlington Electric, which has a clear conflict of interest. Funds for the study should come from Burlington Electric, and the study should be inserted into the current IRP where it should already be, but that has been neglected. And I would just remind you that biomass plants have closed throughout New England for both environmental reasons and because they're not economically viable. As you just heard, and as you may already know, McNeil is extremely expensive to run. It operates at a significant loss most years, and there's just no business case for keeping the plant open. You know, this year happens to be the 40th anniversary of the McNeil plant's opening. And I think what seemed like a good idea back in 1984, we now know to be a climate catastrophe in 2024. And it's just no longer acceptable to ignore long-established science and also to ask ratepayers to shoulder the burden of this relic. Every day that McNeil runs causes immediate and irreversible harm. We have a duty to shut it down, and I would really like to see TEUC begin that process now. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ashley. Is there anybody else online who would like to address the TEUC? Indicate so by raising your hand. Okay, looks like we have another. I can't read it.
Lindsay Bachelor.
Lindsay Bachelor, maybe? Go ahead.
I'm a Ward 1 resident of Burlington, and a voter. And I think that also that the Cherry Street construction should be looked at more closely. I think that it should be like fully pedestrianized, and to have a bike lane because it doesn't have a bike lane right now. And then on top of that, there's also there was supposed to be a bike lane from Main Street all the way to the waterfront. But I've heard that like that isn't going to be as long. So I think if we were able to have like a bike lane from Main Street down to the waterfront, it would be super accessible for a lot of people, like especially students who don't have cars. There's cities like Paris, who every Sunday of the month, every first Sunday of the month is a car-free day. We could like look into that and try and be more like sustainable, and especially if like we're able to get new streets that are being worked on anyways to have bike lanes and pedestrian lanes. I think that that might be a good implementation in the city. And it would just be more safe overall. There would be less car accidents because there's less cars. And pedestrians wouldn't have to walk in the street, and that's very unsafe. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Also looks like we have Bob Atchison. Go ahead, Bob.
Hi, this is Bob Atchison. I'm the Energy Coordinator in Plainfield and also a member of Stop Vermont Biomass. We are in a conundrum, as you know, with a planet threatened, a civilization threatened, and we just have to stop burning things. You know, the plant, which was built in 1984, is now 40 years old. It's outlived its usefulness. The technology is old, and the pollution is still there. As our coal plants being shut down all over the place, this and other biomass plants, including the one in Reigate, ought to be able to hang it up and move on. You have a nice piece of land down there that could be used for something productive, but not for burning things anymore. So I would welcome you to think deep, think long, and listen to your soul and your consciousness, and not the words of the staff that are trying to defend who knows what, mostly their salaries, I suspect. Anyway, thank you, and Chuck.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anybody else online who wants to address the two? Seeing none. I see that Nick Sampieri has just joined us, and I'm guessing he'd like to address.
I would, thank
Okay.
you.
Go ahead, we're.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm late, I got
That's okay.
tied up in construction. traffic.
Understood.
Shocking.
And I
Go ahead.
don't really have too much to say other than that I just recently sent an email with some summary financial information on Eagle's profit and losses going back to fiscal year 2016. And what it shows is that they've lost money, I think 7 out of the last 9 years. And in some of the years, the losses were substantial. The fiscal year 2024 to date through April 30th, losses over $8.5 million. And one thing that's striking about the figures is how heavily dependent the financial viability of the plant is on sale of RECs or renewable energy certificates. And Connecticut is planning on paring back its purchases of those RECs by half, starting in August of this year. And I think that actually won't be reflected until the following fiscal year's numbers. But that's very concerning going forward. It's also very concerning going forward that the price of market power is projected to be low. I mean, ordinarily we would think that that's a good thing. But in the case of McNeil, it generates revenue when the market prices are higher, which doesn't look like it's going to be the case going forward for the next several years, except during the winter months of December, January, and February. The problem is it operates at a loss the rest of the year when it does operate. And if it doesn't operate, then it doesn't generate RECs. It still has to pay fixed costs, so that's concerning. So I really think, I ask you to take a look at these numbers. I'm sure you'll probably run by. This is based on information from Burlington Electric. And I really feel like we need to start a conversation about closing down the plant and trying to line up alternatives. I don't know what the alternatives are. I'm trying to get information from Burlington Electric on that. Ideally, we like to move towards wind and solar power and battery storage. I don't know if that's feasible right away, if there's enough available. There may not be. If that's the case, I think we'd be better off just buying, gas or even nuclear. In the meantime, save money and it would be better from a carbon emission standpoint. So I just asked you, as you plan your agendas for meetings going forward, I asked you to set aside some time to discuss this in the future meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. And I don't see anybody else online with their hand raised. I don't see anybody else in the room, so I'll go ahead and close public comment and move back to our agenda. The next item is our deliberative agenda. And the first item is agenda planning for TEUC. I'll set this up, and I apologize to everyone who has come to pitch ideas on TEUC agenda planning, and certainly we can consider increasing the scope of this discussion, but it's my fault. The agenda item was probably a little bit too general, but what I was hoping we could do at a minimum tonight is to try to figure out how we're going to work into our schedule the commitments that the city council has referred to us in two resolutions, the building emissions reduction ordinance resolution and the update to rental weatherization standards resolution. Certainly, if we can handle that and talk about some other items, I'm open to that. I'm also open to other ideas from the committee, but at a minimum, I wanted to tackle trying to do some planning around when we could have, because some of these commitments are around scheduling other meetings for the public and having work product back to the city council by October. So I'll open up for a general discussion about how we want to scope the discussion, and then we can jump in. Go ahead, Jim.
So first of all, I don't think that we can do the work that we need to do with just one meeting a month. I say that as somebody who has 4 committees and is overcommitted with all sorts of life, but when I keep talking about children and children's children, et cetera, that means I got to do the work if I'm here at the table. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in looking at the Excel sheet with the items that we've got and listening to what people have given us, it seems like we have got 3 baskets. We've got 3 categories of work that everything sort of fits in. And maybe there's another one that I've missed, but one is, I'm going to call it energy generation. That's McNeil. That is the solar stuff that we were talking about. We had the conversation at the last meeting. It could be anything related to energy, so net metering or something like that. I see building decarbonization in a very broad way, so that's where those 2 resolutions come in. But our conversations previously have talked about the building codes and their relationship to our neighbor communities, South Burlington and Solar Ready. I have been working with folks both in VEIC but also in the passive homes community around making changes to the building code. That's all parcel of building decarb. I think we can fold that in. And the last issue I think is transportation. The last category is transportation. And, you know, so, and that goes from the construction on Pine Street and everything that the department is managing to the railroad enterprise, you know, including the railroad enterprise, but also to TDM. You know, the GMT area that we're doing and Burlington International Airport, including the Guard and the F-35s. And so when I think about, you know, and maybe I missed a category, but it helps me to think about the categories and then to think about how, you know, what we've got in them. And then how we're going to sequence the conversation. So we have got some comprehensive review of them. Building decarb, we clearly have issues related to, and transportation keeps coming up because of the projects that we've got. But we have had ongoing and I think necessary work that we had to put off this month around transportation demand management. I don't know if anybody in this room went to the webinar today, except for me, by Burlington to 2030 something or other, which is a private non-public activity or organization that, among other things, is doing transportation, and that was directly on studying transportation and emissions reductions and its relationship with TDM and transportation options. And so that's the way that I'm looking at this stuff. I would like us, for example, to have the TDM meeting next month. It was supposed to be this month, and then bring all the players together, because we have had siloized conversations. I think that there is a roadmap, and we got part of it last month, and I'm going to stop because, like all other politicians in this room, with one exception, I can go on way too long. So, is the, you know, there is a roadmap in terms of McNeil in the district energy resolution, and that includes, in my mind, a review of the finances, which I support wholeheartedly, and you know, the question of a transition away from what we're doing. So I see that as totally consistent, and we did start to get some information, and it's just a question of sort of delving down, and perhaps the way to do it is through planning meetings, just like we did with the McNeil Symposium. So anyway, lost the
thank you. I like your idea of sort of those general buckets, and I agree that those are the three big ones that we've had various items referred to. We do have specific deliverables in the district energy resolution, and I know that in this budget that we just passed, there is funding to do some of the work we've asked BED to do. So maybe one of the things we can do around the interest there is to make sure we get a progress report on a fairly regular basis from BED to see where they are with that, and then do additional planning around anything that isn't included in the resolution deliverables, but there's interest. Like, I don't know if there is anything in the resolution about, I was actually looking for it and I wasn't able to pull it up easily, but I know I have a hard copy at home.
I can send the committee
Yeah,
a copy. Let me do that right now.
But yeah, if there's things on the financial aspects of the deal that we want to discuss, I don't think that was anticipated in the at least explicitly anticipated in the deliverables in the district energy resolution. So yeah,
And for me, it's implicit.
Right.
In it, and it's inherent. You have to look at the finances if you're going to look at transitioning fuel sources.
Right, there is the transition study, or you know, I guess that's what it is. It's a transition study. So other thoughts on this process tonight. And other thoughts on Jean's, idea about having more regular, have additional scheduled TEUC meetings. I'll say that I was sort of thinking of special topics meetings, like around TDM. We know that that could be a meeting into itself. Around the Bureau, there's public. Sure. We got getting input from, there's like public fora that are anticipated, getting input from the public, climate advocacy organization, relevant labor unions, large building owners, et cetera, et cetera. We need to schedule those forums so that we can collect that information as part of this process. And I was hopeful that we might be able to try to put some dates down to start figuring out where, even if we didn't know the exact structure of everything just yet, to try to figure out when we're all going to be available, given that we are in the sort of the summertime. I know people have other vacation plans and things potentially. Other thoughts?
Shuffling and off, I don't stop.
First,
Go ahead.
one of you forward that Excel spreadsheet to me. I tried looking for it.
I can do that. Yeah, I can do it right now.
And no, I agree with you and Jean.
So are folks open to scheduling additional TEUC meetings in addition to our fourth Tuesday regular scheduled meeting?
I would be.
I guess that's also a question for staff's availability if you want to do something like that.
Yeah, I guess my initial thought is ultimately if we need to warn additional meetings and coordinate the room, that's doable. I think if we're gonna focus on a lot of areas like McNeil, for example, or building decarbonization, that's not necessarily DPW's wheelhouse, and it would be great to get some support for running those meetings so that we're not shouldering all of that burden.
Understood. That makes sense to me too. But certainly anything around transportation.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would make sense. Okay, so given that, what are folks' schedules like before we start to figure out what we're going to slot things in here? I'm fairly, I think I've done most of my travel for the summer.
I have scheduled some fun things with my wife, but yeah, they are. But I can fit things in the third and fourth week of July, which is why actually I think we scheduled our meeting for the 22nd, which is great. The second week of July, for example, is much more open for me. So, as an example, I haven't glommed up with the exception of one camping vacation in Maine in the third full week.
Second week of July.
August.
Is second week of July is something that is open for you, if we were able to do.
Yes, yes.
The TDM into that.
I
Did Charles, I haven't had the conversation.
I have had a conversation with Charles, and we've actually talked about it in two ways. So Charles Dillard for Evan and Merrick is the interim planning director, and there has been a study of transportation demand management at a citywide level with a focus on a pilot project in the North Winooski Avenue area. I don't know if I might tell you something you don't know. Something you do know, something you don't, okay, so they did a pilot study in that area and have the results of that. He and I have been talking about breaking down the silos between all the aspects of transportation that involves, transportation demand management and options and reducing vehicle miles traveled, and all those buzzwords. And so the idea that he has settled on, I think, and that we have settled on, is for him to initiate a roundtable with, this would be an incredible group of people, because it'd be like all the stakeholders, and would be town planners, GMT and folks, the other, BPW would be invited. That would be more, it wouldn't be like from the committee, it'd be just like governmental. And then the regional planning. And so they would just hold that, which would then mean that we could just sort of have a conversation about what the planning office has been doing in terms of transportation options and a study, and really get focused on that, and to the extent to which we could bring in the players in the city that need to be there to be in this conversation. So be CATMA or something, then we could have that. So
planning would organize that meeting?
So the big meeting would be done by planning.
Okay.
And that, that's actually pretty exciting, because that would, that starts to get government to government and nonprofits. Becomes pretty exciting, which then allows us to focus.
We want to do ours after?
No, I don't think it makes it, I don't think it makes a difference. I think that we can do ours before, particularly if it's most focused on Burlington, and then has an eye to sort of the future, and a way to link with that. So because it's all linked, and we've got to figure out how to do it. The conversation with GMT is totally implicated by that. Right?
So are you suggesting the second week of July, we would have our meeting and we would invite Charles?
I think that we should shoot, I think we should shoot for that.
Okay, the second week of July is the week of the 8th to 12th. Yeah. And so I don't know if there's a particular day that works better for anybody. I'm open on most of those days. I would suggest to us that Fridays are ideal days.
I have an RAIP meeting at 5:30 on Tuesday the 9th. That is the only conflict I have.
Anybody else? We've scheduled something?
I will be out of state from, I think, the 8th to the 11th. That's how it's currently planned, but I would be willing to come back early if we were to do that Thursday.
Or you could just participate remotely as well.
I'm not sure about the internet at where I'm going, but assuming that's all fine, yeah, I would be fine doing remote. And but so my one conflict is I have license committee on the 10th.
I have CN on the 12th.
The 12th of July, Friday.
No, it says, oh, I'm looking at 2022. Never mind. Scrolling.
You say you were really lucky duck.
Yeah. Scrolling. I don't know how it went to 2022. Oh, they don't have it on there yet. But I know I have on my Google calendar. Well, CDNR might be the 17th actually. Could be good. And I also may be out of state.
So we're talking about the 11th. And is this room available? Is this transportation related? So it would be potentially something we want to do.
I'm looking at the room right now, and it looks like the Ward 5 NPA might be in that.
Oh darn.
On
July 11th,
But maybe City Hall.
Yeah,
maybe
we
Charles
could
could
do it and
or
for sure.
apologies, folks. It looks like that special NPA meeting might actually be on Lakeside, but not here. So this room is available.
What's let's do it, I know it's not ideal. For getting ourselves, so maybe we'll ride our bikes. Wanna shoot for 5:30.
I can't do anything before 5:30.
5:30, is that 5:30 work?
That's the earliest I can make, especially to come down.
So 5:30 on the 11th. In a couple hours.
I think it would be fair, maybe we wouldn't need it, actually.
Anyway, well, let's just shoot for 5:30 to 7:30. We've been trying to get that done and it keeps on getting bumped, and then Charles bumped it this time, I think.
Yeah. So I have just sent him a text.
Okay. Okay,
And just for context, I believe that it's still somewhat fluid, but I believe that the proposed development in the ride your bike lot that the city has been participating in is going to be a major item of the Ward 5 NPA. There's always overlap, but I want you to be aware that that will have a transportation element as well that will be at the same time.
so you're saying we might have like Charles or somebody might be.
I'm just not sure. I know that that a couple of people, Nick Anderson from Champlain, some Ride Your Bike folks, I don't think it's a total conflict. I just wanted full transparency to know that that's a transportation oriented meeting around new streets in that potential development.
Has Charles been the point person for that?
He's been participating. With Megan gone, it's Charles, myself, Laura, and Zach from CETO.
And when does the NPA start? It's like 7.
Right now, it's held at 6:30. So you'd have an hour part of that.
Okay.
Could be convenient to meet here and go over. So.
So let's try it.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a TDM related one. I'd still have an interest in trying to at least tackle trying to do schedule some meetings around the referrals on Hero and rental weatherization. Hero was for first. I'm wondering if there may not be an opportunity to combine some of these. Even though they're different resolutions, they have some similar elements in terms of public engagement.
Well, and I think they relate to the feasibility of the work, right? So. And to the extent to which we can get baseline information from various departments, that would be a good place to start.
Bill Ward texted me before this meeting and he indicated that he should have the availability. He doesn't have any vacation scheduled till October. Should be no conflicts. So we can assume that he
Can we do it on the 22nd
of July.
of July,
Let's look.
which we have a scheduled meeting?
Oh, right, we do.
So we have a scheduled meeting there, and
Is it the 23rd of July?
no, it is something different because they're so nice to me that they're gonna let me go to Massachusetts for music.
July 22nd, we have a meeting, I don't have it on my calendar.
It's, if you look at the agenda for today, the last item, the next meeting is July 22nd, because and it's actually in my calendar.
It appears there's gonna be a conflict with this room on that day, which begins at 6 p.m. with the housing board review.
Can we go to Busher?
I really want to use that nice new renovated house, the new. At 311 North Ave.
Do they have
Sounds
a-
good to me.
Do they have a jumbotron?
They have a jumbo screen, a conference room, they have a kitchen, a nice little, it's a nice little spot there and I've been dying to use it. He always wants to use the Busher room.
Oh,
Riveting.
it's centrally located.
I'm good with meeting on North Ave.
Bring it to the old North End.
I mean, I'm happy to do that as well. It's closer for me, but, if there's nothing scheduled, when they have the technology.
Yeah.
Well, most importantly, I don't want to be us with sticks and glue trying to make Zoom go in some.
Yeah.
You know, lesser conference room.
So the understanding would be that for the special meeting on the 11th, the plan will be to meet there if it works technologically.
No.
We're gonna meet here on the 11th.
11th here and then
22nd.
Great,
22nd at potentially 311.
you all are following along and I missed it, thank you.
311.
North Avenue.
Do they call that Keesley Park or they call it?
It's called the Stone House, I think.
Right, see, it's the Stone Cottage,
Cottage,
old
yeah.
Stone Cottage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks really nice from the outside, I really like
I
it.
had a tour before it was
Yeah,
finished. It's
beautiful.
Counselor Living, do you have contacts there? Would you like me to follow up with them to see if it's still?
If you can connect with Cindy
Parks.
directly or whoever manages
Yeah.
that.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. And I will confirm the technology as,
Right, and if it's not, we can fall back on brochure.
I'll check in on both.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's great.
And that could even go to this part, because that one is one where it's not technology or transportation related, so. Could ask about getting it staffed by. BD or.
Yeah, BED, and it seems to me that BED and permitting and inspections. And it would be great, I don't know if they have the capacity, it's a little bit further along the planning. Because this is about how we organize our streets, the orientation of our buildings, and you know, the sort of readiness of that, so.
Well, we'll get the placeholder for where, and then we can work on the who, a little bit more, as long as people are available for that. And for that meeting, for our regular scheduled meeting, we're saying that we would want to tackle some of the more specific planning or baseline information collection from EPI. But we wouldn't be scheduling the public forum for that. For these.
No, I think that we, when I read the energy reduction ordinance resolution and I look at the Wenzel registration, it will be very helpful to just have the data from BED and any other sources about energy usage in our buildings and decarbonization. It will be really important to understand the progress made in the weatherization work.
Yeah.
I think that if we can request any assistance from BEIC, even though BED is the energy the efficiency utility here. There may be collaborations in terms of that. I don't know. That's something I think maybe has.
Right, and there's also a workforce component, but around weatherization and whether it's CEDO and or workforce development.
Yeah, I think
whoever's got the money or the potential.
I think Cara has,
Cara
took the money
Yeah.
this time, but that's an open conversation.
Right, yeah,
But
that's an ongoing conversation.
I think they need to, you know, we need to make the invite so that we can, okay, this is the lay of the land.
Mhm.
And then we can, with that information, I think we can plan the outreach.
Plan the outreach after, I agree with that. Is everybody else good with that? Okay. So with that, we will. Just making a note on invitations to the various city departments. And we'll also let other interested parties who have been engaging us on this know that that's coming up, so they can come at least. And we'll
So there is one other department or office that in the ideal world, they should be involved in both of these. And that is the attorney's office. I hesitate, the city attorney's office, but it would be good for us to request of them if they have the capacity, which is built into these resolutions. Some sort of listing of the ordinances that are out there in the United States and the rest of the world. I think that if the Germans or the French or whoever are doing it right, there's no reason for us.
Specifically around bureau and there is like. Yeah, it's. Leaders in other coal climate cities are adopting building decarbonization.
Yes. So it would be really good.
It'd be good to have
a list of those and to be able to access that.
Yeah, I'm not sure who we asked on that, it's the city attorney or something.
I think it is the city attorney's office, and I think that we're gonna get the capacity issue, but I think it's worth to put it into the hopper.
Okay. So with that, at least we got a start on these two that I wanted to. We have additional transportation and around McNeil and energy generation. I don't know if they have an update for us, but I can certainly do outreach to them and ask them some of the district energy resolutions where those are. I know they came
Last time, the minutes did reflect what was said. We didn't get a written report. That would be good to do that, and I am moved by what Nick and Ashley and Pike are presenting, and I would actually like us to have a conversation that is understandable to non-accountants, non-energy financial experts about the finances. So in the context of this, because either they're right or they're not. Let's get the numbers on the table.
Well, and then it becomes also a capacity issue for us and a prioritization of what do we prioritize, because we can't just keep jamming in a whole bunch of new committee meetings to fill the new whatever.
It's not new.
Well, it may not be new, but the committee has capacity. So we had two resolutions, one of which was brought forth by your party that we need to focus on.
Well, but this resolution was brought forward and passed with my support and Mark's support in November, and it calls for all these things.
Right,
so we have.
And it has deadlines on it. And so that's all I'm saying is that if we're gonna start taking up the McNeil.
This is the McNeil. The
McNeil's
McNeil thing
ongoing.
is something that the council passed in November 20th.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
I just sent it, and it's got these, and inherent in it is a conversation about the finances. Yeah, you can't do it without.
No, I agree, I'm more just thinking of, okay, what comes first and how much can we do and.
Well, we have these two items. We have, we're taking up a piece of the transportation demand management, which has been bumped a couple of times. And we're taking up some of the recent referrals from council on building decarbonization. So this would be just to try to get this into the schedule.
Yeah. And I mean, from my perspective, it could be done at a special meeting, because that way you would save for the regular meetings, the things that DPW has also got that we need to be dealing with. So I would think that the TDM meeting would also could be scheduled in a way that would, that if DPW has got items there, particularly they're gonna be transportation, we can fit them in. I think, for example, Charles could do something in a half hour or 40 minutes. So,
One other thing I guess we ought to do is just to, even if we don't know the content, is to find another meeting calendar placeholder for an additional off-cycle meeting maybe in August. Is that works for folks? And we, just so that we all have that. In addition to our regular schedule, that would be an opportunity to do this or something else or anything else that's emerging between them. Do you want to do that, or since we're all sort of talking about trying to plow through some of this work, or do you want to wait until? What are folks saying?
for the fourth Tuesday of August is the 27th.
Yeah.
Which is wide open for me first. And there's a earlier in the month, when is the city council meeting in August? Is it gonna be the 12th?
Yes,
I have it as the 12th.
yeah. So.
Or I guess if we're gonna put in another meeting the week of the 19th through the 23rd would be ideal,
Better,
if we have to do that.
right, I would just say
Depending.
we'll put in a placeholder for now, and then
I can do the 22nd that week.
if there's any 22nd.
I can do the 22nd in a non,
I just want a placeholder that I know we all have calendar availability, and then we can figure the rest of it.
22nd. So
22nd,
is open for me that week. The other days I'm not gonna even get internet access.
how about you, Mayor? You the 22nd?
Yeah, that week is fine.
Okay, we're gonna put a pin in the 22nd then at 5:30. On August 22nd, and I'm not sure where we'll be at or anything, unless it's available.
As of now, yeah,
It
the
is.
hold on this room.
Yeah, let's just hold it here then for now. And then we'll figure out if we're gonna do it between now and sometime in July. That way we're not chasing everybody around with doodle polls.
Yeah.
That's great.
Right. From staff's perspective, I think just thinking through trying to have 4 meetings in the summer is a lot, so 3 maybe doable and be cautious about trying to.
And it's also something that potentially if it needed to be staffed.
Right.
If it wasn't transportation related.
Right.
I could lean on
Others.
DP or DPI or somebody.
Yes.
I would think that the 23rd or 22nd, I'm sorry, we would ask it to be in BET and have it be McNeil. And then that would make most sense.
So in that way, it wouldn't be,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
can-
a burden on that.
Rob, you're comfortable setting up a meeting and warning a meeting?
Have to.
Yeah, great.
And so, but let's just put a hold on this room for now. We can give it up if we end up over BET or something.
Great.
Okay, cool. And I can help coordinate that longer range planning.
If you would like to.
Absolutely. I would love your. Okay, so is that enough for us for now, for agenda planning?
Even for me. You want more?
I was hoping for more meetings.
Here, go push. Go ahead. Give me a
Okay, well, thank you. It's really helpful to do this in the setting, even though I know it's sort of meta work in some respects. We have a lot of stuff that's been coming to TEUC, and we need to sort of sequence it in some fashion, so it's really helpful. I will go ahead and close out that item for tonight and move on to our next item, and we have our regular recurring visit from GMT.
It's been a while since I've been here, actually.
Wait,
Missed you all.
we should just pull up. We should just put a.
We should just have a standing
standing seat.
on the two.
I think you'll get tired of me pretty quickly. And so I understand that we were gonna walk through the presentation that we gave to our board of commissioners earlier in the month. And do we have that to share? It's from a packet, thank you.
We have, and it's been shared with the committee, so I think that really just wave tops and more of a discussion is probably the best
Perfect.
use.
Then, well, thank you for that context, and so I will change course a little bit. I think that what I want to sort of focus on is going to be the fiscal year 25 and 26 potential service reductions, because those are going to have activities that are going to be quickly. So if we were to jump ahead to slide 7, actually, I think would be the best one to start. Yes, one more. And so we did agree at the June meeting that we would be considering service reductions in fiscal year 25, and so that was something that we weren't sure that we were going to pursue, just because we have concerns about issuing an assessment to you all and then reducing service. And so, but we came to the realization that it's something that we need to do. And so that happened already at the June meeting. And this is really gonna be the same map that we use for fiscal year 26, so it'll kind of cover both at the same time. So in July, it looks like the Board of Commissioners will probably be meeting twice, and at our second meeting on July 30th will be when they're going to establish savings targets. It will be for both fiscal year 25 and 26. We will then turn around a month later and give the board what service reductions would be necessary to hit those targets in August. We would then take their feedback, modify the plan, and then put it out to the public so that by the end of August and through September, we would be having public hearings about 25 and 26. Then we would reconvene with the board in October so that they would then be able to make a final decision. And the reason why making that decision in October is important is because number one, we need to start working on the fiscal year 26 assessments for you all, so that we know what that's going to look like post-service reductions. And also in November is when we have to provide our sustainability plan to the legislature so that they can see what steps we're taking to get to financial sustainability. And then let's see, where else should we go? If we go to slide 11, not really something that's, I imagine that you all are going to get too interested in, but certainly one of the things that GMT is wrapping its brain around is whether we want to continue to be a urban and rural system. I can tell you, as always happens, once you start peeling back the onion, that there's complexity, things that seemed, oh, that's so simple, it would just be easy to transfer the service to somebody else, and then you find out, oh, but that's a non-union company, and so how are you going to transfer, Teamsters to non-union? Are they going to be willing to unionize? Maybe not. And so I want you just to know that this is something really fundamental to the root of GMT that we're going to be working on during the same period. Looking to slide, I think, 14. I do anticipate that we are going to be asking for a fiscal year 26 special assessment. We'll start working, and so the special assessment, the statute allows us to, in addition to our normal assessment, to issue a special assessment. The special assessments have to be approved unanimously. So just to be completely frank, I don't have a lot of hope that it will actually come to fruition, because all of our urban members would have to unanimously agree to give us more money. And I suspect that folks will be, it will be difficult for communities to be able to do that. One of the reasons why we have to do this is, unfortunately, it was somewhat held against us at the last legislative session that we hadn't at least asked you all to do that.
some legislators felt, well, look, you have this own process right in statute that you haven't even tried, and you're coming and asking us for money.
If will the special assessment negate the service reductions, or they will be combined? You're gonna do this in a way that's combined.
Yes, so our thinking when it comes to the fiscal year 25 service reductions, I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, those would go into impact in February. And we're gonna try to have that be service that it's gonna be a smaller amount of service that we're gonna be reducing, and service that we probably should be making anyway, just to address concerns over the cost of certain routes, where there may be some duplication. So service that we're not necessarily looking to, preserve this much. Where 26, the special assessment will be for this amount of money that we can reduce the service reductions. The board ultimately will decide whether it will be a large special assessment, which would mean 0 service reductions if enacted, or if it will be a smaller one, which will then just reduce the service reductions. And so I don't want to prejudge what decision we come up with there. Because on the one hand, I would love to ask for, hey, give us collectively, about $2.1 million more, and we'll have no service reductions in fiscal year 26, and have that be too high and we can vote it down. If we did think that maybe $1 million, could be provided, then I would rather have less. I don't want perfect to be the end of the year. And so we will be having that to you all in November to start considering what that would look like. Then probably the next thing to go, we're going to jump even further ahead. Sorry.
When you say to have it to you, have it to the city council.
I would say that we will begin going to the municipality saying this is what we're gonna, we would like to ask. And that it will follow sort of the similar approval plan of our normal budget, which we approved in January or February. And so in November, we would have our targets and we'd be reaching out to you all so we could do that.
Are you doing your presentation chronologically, sort of? I have questions that maybe.
I'm sorry, yeah.
No, you've been asking questions, but I have questions about the near-term service reductions. Would it be better to ask those now or wait till you're done with the?
I was thinking about just powering through this. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, because I would also, depending however you want us to roll with it.
I hate, presentations. I like discussions better. So
Okay.
I was just thinking we.
So keep going, and then we'll ask all of our questions at the end.
We'll fill the meat in on the bones after. If we go to now 27. Let's see. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I can't even read my own slides. 25, let's go to 25. So after October, one of the things that I want you to know that's a real priority for me during my tenure at GMT is working on our assessments that we provide to our member municipalities. Right now, what guides us is statute. Statute is pretty, broad, and it doesn't provide a lot of specificity. And I think that it means that like when a municipality comes to us and says, hey, we want a new shelter. I'm like, okay, well, that's $30,000 to install and X number of dollars, for us to maintain each year. But that doesn't like just automatically get added to the assessment. Because we have the practice of increasing our assessments a percentage, each year. And what that does is it creates this difficult situation where GMT is always saying no to new requests because there's no way for us to get additional funds for it. And that really has stymied some of the our urban municipal partners, because they'll be like, look, we have the money. We want to be able to pay for this new shelter and this new service, but we just don't have a methodology. So I really want to get that taken care of. Let's move to 27. man, I hate to say this one, but we will be looking in, by the end of this year to see whether we think we're gonna make our repair targets. My hope is that we don't have to make any adjustments to the fare level, but we do need to meet that 10% revenue. And so I just want to be completely open with you that we'll be looking at that this fall. And but we really won't know the real impact until we have some data and when the students come back. Let's now go to 28. Very happy to report that I'll be meeting on Monday with some of our initial, to talk with the consultant about some of the initial findings about adding microtransit to our service in addition to ADA. We are hopeful that this may be something that will help us limit the impact on the service reductions, because if we can see that, hey, we can stop this line at 8 p.m., which means that's 3 extra runs that we don't have to run, that maybe only have 3 or 4 people on them, but instead provide the, service from 8 until midnight via microtransit, and that would be more cost effective. That's essentially what we're going to be looking at. And it's our hope that this will help, like I said, mitigate the any fixed line reductions, especially during those times when off peak.
Is this what you were talking about at the airport at the last meeting too?
Yes, exactly. Then I think that's good enough. Because the other is just the even more depressing news that fiscal year 27 looks horrible too. So it's something that it's too.
We only passed the city budget last night. Can you give us a day or two?
So let's get to the questions that you have, and I'll do my best to answer.
You had all.
You had all these questions.
We were ready
I
to
have
hear
questions around the short-term service reductions. Are they, we're talking about GMT's greater system, right? So
talk about just the urban system.
Just the urban system, but it's beyond sort of Burlington specific routes.
Yeah, so basically, if it's a Chittenden County service, then that's what we're talking about.
So are there routes that are like that or have higher ridership, and we would still keep those running as frequently?
And so one of the things that the board will be doing in the next month will be providing us their sort of values. And the values are like, do you want where transit is working well? Do we want to hold there? Knowing that may mean bigger cuts where transit's not working well? Or do we want to have sort of universal coverage everywhere, even where it's not working well? And so that's going to guide our staff decisions. I can tell you my personal bias is that where transit is doing well, where we have the best, where we're moving lots of folks very economically, don't mess with that. And I think that we need to first look at those routes that are duplicative, those routes that have the highest cost per rider because they have fewer riders, and when the cost to us is generally the same for an hour of service, whether you're 5 people or 50 people. So those would be the areas that I would look at cutting first. I want to be open, and I wish that I was closer to the door before I say this. One of the things that we're going to have to look at is if we have 20-minute service up Main Street, number 1, 20-minute service up Pearl and Colchester Ave on the number 2, do we continue to have the College Street when someone could walk 2 blocks in either direction and make it up the hill with 20-minute service? And so I just want you to know that's something that's been identified to look at. See, where was I going? Discussion. So yeah, so my bias is going to be to have probably less routes and runs, but not reducing, where we're moving our roads successfully. And I think that means that probably with the exception of, the College Street shuttle, the runs that go through Burlington's community are pretty successful.
I guess that was the nature of my question is, does this affect outlying areas outside of Burlington
Yes.
more greatly than it is?
I suspect that it will probably, then the downside of that would be, is that, like the number 10 service that connects, Essex to, Williston is one that's really not very cost effective. And we could almost, and I don't even want to speculate because we're too, but that's an expensive service that moves few people.
And again, my other question is around the fare structure. I've shared with you in previous meetings. And I know that others may disagree with me, but I'd rather have more expensive, more frequent service than less expensive, less frequent service. I'd err on the side of convenience because I think you get greater ridership.
Yes.
Because it's still relatively inexpensive, even compared to cars, for instance.
Yes.
So is there a strategy where, I know you talked about increasing fares, but maybe not until further out, where in the short term, a fare increase could help you maintain greater levels of service?
I think that the things that scare me about increasing fares is, I think you've heard me talk before about the stick factors. And so I am certain that we will see that we'll lose ridership. Ridership helps us get extra stick factors, which bring in extra federal dollars. And so what I would be worried about is that, hey, will we say increase fares to $2.50? That will decrease ridership even by just 3 or 4 or 5, 6 extra percent. And then suddenly we have a net loss because we're not getting those federal dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a couple of questions? One is, and I may have, please forgive me if I asked you that this is the last
No problem.
meeting. It's been a couple months as you.
I hope I give the same answer.
Oh, well, if you don't, I'll have to go back and double check and roll the tape. So one thing I think about is the success of, well, we're looking at Europe so much. Maybe we should think about zoning and pricing. And so my neighbors who don't have cars, who live in the Old North End, who have to ride the bus to the Hannaford to get their groceries, and they're going a mile up the road.
Yeah.
For less than 5 minutes, are paying the same price as somebody who's going to the Essex train station.
Yes.
And so many cities, many I've traveled to, use zoned to offset those costs. And I do want to see lines that don't serve Burlingtonians well financially, like maybe the 10 line, looked at closely because they don't connect. For the most part, it's even the few riders on there are not gonna be Burlingtonians, they're gonna be Essex residents or Williston residents. So have you looked at zoned fare, or even doing a trial with some of those routes that do go into places like Williston, Essex?
Yes. So we actively moved away from that with our new fare system by making it a universal fare regardless of the type. And one of the reasons why is that the complexity of the fare system is a deterrent to usage. And because for the people who use it every day, it tends to not be, I think get used to it. But for people who use it infrequently, it increases the difficulty for them in understanding. And we wanted, especially coming from zero fare, where the simplest, you just get on, you don't have to think about it at all. We wanted to have a simpler product. And also, again, because we're trying to preserve those rides. One of the things that seems counterintuitive is that, getting back to those stick factors, those longer rides, when there's somebody on them, actually is the best thing for us for getting the extra money. And so, because some of the measurements are the miles per ride. And so, and so that was why we even made the decision to cut the price of the link service, because it used to be $4 and we made it $2 just like all the other. Because when we can get riders on that link service, those riders are doing a ton of miles per ride, and it really, makes our numbers look better. So that was the reason why we went with the simplified approach. I think that we're gonna need to see that failing before we would consider the zone pricing. And frankly, I can tell you, the rollout for fares, I've been so impressed with the people. I've been impressed with the riders. I've been impressed with the drivers. I've not been impressed with the technology so far. It's not working as advertised. And so the thought now of, adding more complexity to it kind of worries me.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the second question I had is about, and this I know I probably did bring up before, but about the analysis of ridership loss. And so when we're trying to understand sort of, okay, if we're looking at ridership loss, what does that exit survey look like? How are we gathering the information on why Mark stopped riding the bus? Was it because he moved and it no longer made sense for him?
Yeah.
Was it because it wasn't cost effective anymore, or it just took too much time? Or I hear from people that they don't want to go to the downtown transit station.
Yes.
And I've talked to your employees, I've gone down there, I've seen what they're dealing with. It's an untenable situation. And so I wonder, are we undercutting ourselves by not getting the safety and security situation under control? Believe me, I know you're doing what you can within the constraints that you have. But given what's going on at that depot on a daily basis, do we lose rider confidence?
So I can tell you that prior to us starting our new fare system, one of the big problems with how we handled fares before is that we got absolutely zero data from the rider. Meaning that they would come in and give us cash, or some kind of payment for a 10 ride pass or a monthly pass. But like if we wanted to reach out to that person in the future, it's not gonna happen.
Right.
With the system now, what we would actually be able to do is exactly that. Hey, here's somebody that, was a regular rider, and we can run reports so that we can see folks who stopped, and we can then reach out, and be like, what led to that? One of the things that I, as a person with a career in human services and as I think of myself as a socialist, I can't even, I hate what we're finding with the return to fares. But I meet every 2 weeks with our operations supervisory team, and we go over all the no trespasses. And these are the folks that have had some type of incident that means that they shouldn't be on, at the transit center or on the buses. It's not a punitive system, it's only based on, their threat to staff and other riders. We average 4 to 8 of those every 2 weeks. Last week's supervisors meeting was the first time in my tenure where we had none. And it's not, it can't be an accident that it happened just after the return of fares. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm really relieved, because what I was really worried about was conflict at the fare box. Us having 50 people that were now no trespassing because they got into an argument with the driver, and it just didn't happen. And we're seeing that the people are not taking the bus in the morning to get to the transit center to then spend the day there. It costs them $1 or $2. And so we have a lot less people at the transit center. In talking to the drivers, it sounds like we have less people on. It's hard to tell because the schools just let out. So we already have less folks, but their perception is that there's less folks that are just riding the buses to get off the street. And that makes my heart hurt when it's a hot day and I want somebody to have relief, but it's better for the service. And so my hope is that, that trend will continue, and that we'll still have things to work on, but it won't be as bad as it has been.
I know that it's been, because I met with the director of the Burlington Technical School, and I know that it's been a real struggle for them. To be adjacent to that center and to try and ensure the safety of students coming from 9 different towns. Transitioning 3 times a day, and they're having to bring their whole staff as much as they can spare. Out to the transit center multiple times a day to make sure that their students are getting there safely. And then I'm talking to some of your folks who are saying, we have to shut the bathroom down every hour because of biohazard events, and then it takes another hour or 2 before we can get a cleaner over there because of, the situation. And so I think what you're saying is that hopefully that's on the lower end of the bell curve, but improving.
Yes.
And so I hope we keep an eye on that, but whenever we talk about, I get squarely at saying, oh, fares, can hurt ridership, when we don't have the quantitative and qualitative data, which to your point now we can start to get over time. To say, why didn't, sometimes it's just, I moved or I took a different job and I now work from home or whatever, but other times we do hear, I'm sure other counselors do, that people are afraid to take the bus, or they're afraid to put their kids on the bus to go to school there anymore. Seen an increase in people wanting to drive their kids to school instead of just putting them on the city bus, and I don't blame them, so.
I just want to be time check us, because
That's it.
we
That
lose
was
the
not
meeting
even
at
mine.
7:30, we lose the room at 7:30.
Yes, you do.
But I want to give
Keeps us tight.
Clayton his due here, I want others to get it. I know.
Sorry, I should, that's more time than we should.
No, not at all. Barrett, you want to get in?
No, sorry, I'm not right now.
Okay,
Thank you though.
So,
Please feel free to reach out whenever you have.
Yeah.
that would be good. So I think my comments are related totally to engagement. When I look at the plan around the assessments, first thing I looked for in this as this rolling is, are we bringing the municipalities together to sit down in the same room? And I'm not actually talking about the representatives, because structure requires councils and town managers and mayors to be acting in concert. So my first, I think, and fundamental comment is that the engagement that I saw in the plan so far needs to be more greatly developed. And that the city councils should be coming together. In fact, it would be great to have a meeting. Maybe it's too many to have all the members, although it would be great. I mean, member communities. Maybe you're having a couple of different meetings that bring the core places that relate to the roots, so that people can hear together the crisis, can hear together the options that we've got, and can start to engage in that, because as a system that is a county-wide system, and as people who have to go to all sorts of areas for necessities, the doctor, right? I can't live in Burlington, right, alone. And, my needs aren't met. I have to go to South Burlington, Burlington Street, I have to go to other places to go to the dentist, blah, blah. So that I want to encourage you to do that. I want to encourage you to really lay out full range of options, right? So a fair option. If there are good reasons why an option isn't good, let's put that on the table, but let's be able to show people what those are. if there are increased rise, if there's surge, I hate surge pricing actually, but this is some other way of looking at pilots or different things. If eliminating the College Street shuttle is an option, we should lay that out for people so we can have a very fair conversation. And then we get to say as a community, you know what, this is untown. I refuse to accept bus reductions like this, to which the answer is pony up. You know, okay, how do we pay for it? Okay, that's fine. And what those choices are. So so I fear a sort of like process where your board and staff work it all out and then you lay out sort of a plan. I'm actually suggesting that the need is, which is also an opportunity for a more iterative or collaborative and engagement process will actually, I think, get our communities to be thinking more holistically around transportation, and to the extent to which we can, this isn't your primary thing, stop with this, but if we can figure out a way, and maybe it's your board or members of the board, can figure out the ways that we can make the changes in zoning, in other things, I don't know, you know, like housing development, that will increase the likelihood that people will take a bus or will, you know, have that opportunity to take the bus, then we should do that. So TDM. So you guys living on your own is a recipe for inadequacy, not necessarily failure.
Yeah.
And so we've got to have a better thinking about it. And in fact, that was much of the conversation in this hour-long webinar put on by this group, the Burlington 2030 district, I guess. So those are my suggestions to the extent to which I can help in those conversations.
Gene, I really appreciate that. I can tell you that I've been working individually with municipalities now. One of the things that this was a presentation that was just making sure that the board understood what they needed to do. But we have been working actively, like for example, the College Street shuttle has been something that we talked to South Burlington about, saying, hey, if we need to, change this, that would impact, the other. And so those conversations are happening individually now. I think absolutely that especially once the table is sort of set for the amount of reductions that we're going to be looking at. Yeah. That's when I want to gather everybody together for those things. And we're going to be doing that not only with our folks in urban, but also with our folks in rural, because we want to make sure that, hey, do you want another provider in? I'm sure there's some communities that would probably love to see GMT replaced by another provider, and hey, if that's what they want, then we want, we want to consider that. So community outreach to municipalities.
And as you do that, I would also add that we should have the legislators, because they're working sort of at a distance on a lot of the funding stuff. They can start to hear the actual conversations and how it's impactful to communities. I think it could be helpful to try to get additional dollars.
I do also want to let folks know that there's going to be 2 new transportation committee chairs next year. Unfortunately, because Senator Mazza passed, and I think that the person who was the acting chair is probably going to be another committee chair in another committee. So there may be a friendly face, on that. Tom Chittenden is able to get his place to chairmanship. I think it's looked at being said. Representative Coffey, who was the chair in House, she definitely had concerns about GMT, and if there was somebody that was, a little more, interested in urban transit, I could see things playing very differently at the State House next year, especially when they're given, here's the specific things that will be gone.
Thank you. I'm gonna give Chapin, if you want to get on this, give you the last word, and then we gotta move us along to Bank and Charity.
Yeah, I think this is a great conversation. I asked the chair to bring this to us the second that we had the presentation at the board. I think when the legislature didn't fully fund the need to continue our operations, it was a shot across the bow for a sustainable transit system in Chippewa County. And I am fearful coming out of COVID. I'm fearful with inflationary pressures that from a public policy standpoint, we need to rebuild our base and we need to prove and focus on the basics that staff is doing, because we gotta deliver on the basics. We're gonna have to retrench ourselves, which means we're gonna have to slim down a bit in order to be at a sustainable level from which we can grow again in the future. And I really feel like this is, you know, not the position I wanted to be in after 21 years of supporting GMT, and I brought the Link Expresses to fruition. I helped bring the rural again with the urban. Now we're talking about pulling it out. The reality is GMT is a high cost operator. That's because of many reasons. We have transit centers we have to maintain. It's because we have union wages that we support. It's because we have big buses that are stainless steel to prevent corrosion but cost lots of money. And as a result, there are communities, most of Vermont communities, that can't afford our rates. And so I think the reality is our best hope for retrenching is to continue to be effective in the urban core of Virginia County and to grow that out. It's gonna be a hard conversation. I think you're right, Gene, about our hope for not having to contract more than absolutely necessary will be absolutely dependent on us building new alliances and having South Burlington, Winooski standing up for transit and not just having it be, it's a Burlington thing. We pay 53% of the assessments. No other community is in it like we're in. If we stepped out, GMT would crash. But we are the one that's gonna have to try to help save it because we are the biggest investor. And there's a lot right with GMT, and Clayton's been a very strong leader for us at a time. We've had a lot of transition in the high, in the general manager position. But he stuck with it. He's gotten support of the union, gotten support of admin, support of the board. And I think that Clayton is facilitating the difficult conversation that, for better or worse, given the legislature's actions, given the unlikelihood that the city's gonna wanna increase property taxes substantially, is that we are gonna need to downsize responsibly, and we need to have that open conversation.
Want to keep us moving, so.
Yeah,
Charity.
excellent.
Yeah,
Good seeing everybody.
Yeah.
I look forward to all the extra meetings this summer to come.
Sorry about the bad news, but
No,
we like having you here, so I'm sure we'll have you back a bunch more times.
so the story's not over yet, so
Right.
hopefully we'll, it's just the drama where the act two, where everything
right.
seems like it's lost.
The work that you do to get the legislators going, to get attention, which they didn't have until you started doing those meetings, I think is illustrated. Also, I would encourage you to think about doing the same thing with regard to this, even as you're developing that, the plan.
Okay, thank you, Clayton. We're going to move along here to the bank charity concept plan. So Laura Wheelhouse here also online.
Yes. Thank you. I will say a few quick words, and I want to thank Laura and Julia for sticking with this. We really enjoyed our conversation back in May 23rd when we met with the TEUC, and we went to the city council, received a number of good questions from the council, some hard questions. And at the end of the day, we decided to slow down the process so that we could come back to the TEUC. And I think, Merrick, you were suggesting with Gene, take more time to have the conversation. So we're pleased to be here tonight. I do want to say that your investment and vision in a strong multimodal future is great, and staff is supportive of that. I acknowledge that I could have provided more context at the council meeting about the process that led up to our request for a conceptual approval on the design. There are a number of pieces that we collectively, the council and the department, have invested in over the last 13 years. We have passed plans that have directed us to do what has been laid out. We have city place commitments to service garages on Pine and St. Paul that need to be accommodated with vehicular use, and retail that they are planning in needing to load and serve. And there are grant commitments that we together have accepted that have laid out a vision for a multimodal streets that accommodate vehicular traffic. I do see, even within approval of the plans that are presented to you, flexibility in the future. We talked about festival streets at the council meeting, this could happen nights and weekends. We talked about one-way streets, those could be accommodated in the future. We've talked about future conversations around pedestrianized pilots. Those can happen, but we have not had any public meetings with business community or anybody or businesses who have drive-throughs about how they would exist in a pedestrianized world. So there's a lot of work that would need to be done to fully evaluate a dramatically different design than what has been put forth. That said, Julia's here, Laura's here, we're happy to have the conversation. I am hopeful that there is a recommended motion in your packet that the TEUC would like to consider. At the last meeting, you all tentatively approved the conceptual design. We had what I thought was good public engagement, comments that were more tactical in nature, not overly strategic in fundamentally changing things. And I have to say, we secured $55 million that's time limited. And I would really hate to lose that opportunity. So hoping we can work together to move forward. So Laura and Julia.
I think Julia's gonna speak.
I guess I'll just add a little bit of context about the grant that we have and what the concerns are around the schedule. So we did apply for this funding with our 75% plans for 6 of the 8 blocks of the project. And part of our obligation under the grant is to have basically construction funds obligated, which means our construction documents are ready for bidding by June of 2026 for the CDS funding and June of 2027 for the raise funding. So the CDS Cherry Street, the raise funding is the entire project area. And that, I know it sounds like that's 2 years away, but there's a lot that needs to happen between now and then to get us to that stage, including the 6-month environmental permitting review, multiple plan submissions and reviews by the state and federal government, and utility coordination, time for the actual design. So we're already in a pretty tight schedule as it was, and making big drastic changes to the design at this point would definitely put our funding and process in.
Julia, are you guys presenting something or are you just sharing?
I'm just.
Yeah, we had a memo in the packet. I think everybody's had a chance to read it. We have printed out the plan view on a table behind us, and given that it looks like there.
I think the graphic is also.
Yeah, it's in the packet as well. So we wanted to cut to the chase since you've received 2 presentations now, and it's the conversation that was certainly, there were challenging questions to staff, which is great. And we together need to find out how to manage risk and move forward.
So just to understand what you would like us ultimately to do, if the committee wants to, is to make the motion that is
in the packet
on the first page of the book.
Correct.
Okay.
Under
With
request.
that, go ahead, Gene.
So I have to say that when we met last month or whatever it is that we met, I was totally focused on Pine and St. Paul, the through streets. I had no thinking at all about the Bank Street extended from Pine to Winooski, and in particular, I really didn't focus on going from St. Paul to Winooski. So I totally appreciate the conversation at the council. And, you know, I am really not convinced that Bank and Cherry from St. Paul to Winooski should allow vehicular traffic, that they should not be limited to pedestrians and bikes. I do think that truck loading and deliveries are essential for the businesses there, and that needs to happen, and that is consistent with with Church Street. But the opportunity to create that greater pedestrian grid, I think, is really good. And I think that crossing Church Street in cars on those two blocks is miserable at best, as it is right now. I think it's crazy. I never do it. And you know, one of the things that so I think that is something that I'm not sure why, even within all the constraints, that cannot happen. And that's one of the reasons that I asked about the number of parking spaces that's lost, because I really do think that parking is a business issue. But the cross travel, I'm not clear, since you've got garages and you're gonna have garages, that is there. So that's my thinking about that. I want to hear the reasons why the issues that have been raised around making St. Paul Street only bike and bus from Cherry is not allowed, not acceptable, is a violation of agreements. You know, I think that needs to be laid out. I think that I would like to hear why the changes that are proposed by Joe Kane in his email regarding Pine Street are don't make sense. I'll just try to say it in a really blunt way, and want to hear the reasons why expanding that pedestrian area in the bank in Cherry should not be done. And let me end by saying that I in reading the report, it is really clear to me that the documents that we are relying on, all the plans, well, I understand why we did it, are too old to be binding or fully compelling. So it's not to say that we shouldn't be using them and that you should be faulted for relying on them and working to them, because that's the directions that you've gotten. But decisions and plans that were done in 2011, the latest ones that were done in 2018, I think it was, before the pandemic, make them very much not fully compelling. I think there is compelling aspects for it. So I am most interested in the space, Bank and Cherry between St. Paul and Winooski in terms of a fundamental change, and then want to hear the reasons why the changes that are suggested, the bike lane, fully pedestrianization, or et cetera, are not acceptable.
I might take a stab at starting some of that. As it relates to changing our modes of transportation, Director Spencer and Julia also had, started to outline it. Our funding sources had very specific goals inside of them. The RAISE grant, specifically called Reconnecting Downtown, talks about reconnecting our grid with all modes of transportation. If we change some of those base assumptions, we are required to go back to the USDOT and they are required to reevaluate our grant. Specifically, one of the criteria that we do have to measure for a few years after completion of the project is our ADT, which is our annual daily traffic. And again, not completing the project as we proposed it to them will be problematic. Additionally, some of the funding for Cherry Street comes from Senator Leahy, designated as the Church Street side streets. And so while I greatly appreciate your vision, to the point that was brought up a little earlier, it's really hard to change this in this moment without due process. One of the things that was mentioned in the communication was that we went to the Church Street Marketplace Commission, and they're enormous fans of the project as laid out. They asked about how to continue to get more parking spaces immediately adjacent to Church Street, how to get more loading spaces immediately adjacent to Church Street, because these are the things that they're struggling with. Parking garages are not going to accommodate ADA spaces, and they're not going to accommodate loading. And while there is a limited amount of time that street is open to pickups and deliveries, that doesn't serve all businesses because they're not all open at those hours. So there's some real challenges with our economic community with making these types of changes to our street network. And we just need process time. There's nothing about these designs that prevents us from doing something like this in the future. We can paint the asphalt, we can resurface the asphalt, we can make it colored asphalt like we did up on University Place. These designs do have the flexibility, which is what the 2018 Downtown Great Street Standards ask for. Adaptability, so that we can change our streets for the future and not build them in a way that prevents that. But I did want to just kind of add that those bits of information, that some of it's worth hearing again and some of it has not been elaborated yet tonight.
So, you know, I would really be interested, this is obviously don't have the time, in really understanding what sort of flexibility we have within the current contracts to make the changes that we need to do. Perhaps if we absolutely have to have vehicular traffic, motor, cars, that we can build it in a way which is pretty small. I totally get the loading zone thing. I don't think that is an issue that businesses need to get deliveries. So I think that can be built. It's like that on a fully pedestrian Church Street. So that's the kind of flexibility. I'm actually not ready to personally vote for a resolution tonight without seeing and hearing more as it relates to the things that I've asked, and are really looking to see just with it. There's not a big change, but maybe it is too far. But to see if there is, even within the strictures that you're telling me, ways that we can go to the place that we've heard and that I believe we need to go with regard to pedestrians and bike safety. So
a properly done downtown transportation plan is going to take 2 to 3 years minimum to be able to analyze our network, the way that we want things to work, the way that they can work if we remove certain connections. It's going to take 2 to 3 years. We need to be in our construction phase funding for this opportunity within that time period. 2026 for Cherry Street and 2027 for Bank and the surrounding streets. We just don't have the time under this funding source to afford that type of a study. We don't disagree that that study needs to occur. We know that the 2011 plan is out of date. We just don't have the time to put the two together with how the federal funding surplus has hit the entire country. I would say it's a surplus. I don't know. Yeah.
As much as some creative thinking within the strictures that you've got, but anyway, we have little time. So
right. Other committee members?
No.
to get in on this as well. Kevin, you think, Eric?
I'm relatively happy with the design. I err on the side of listening to the experts in this room who have been working on this for years, who are very clearly telling us that we are risking our funding. That this is too far down the train track to have really substantial changes, and so I think not taking a vote on this tonight, you know, again, just sort of puts more things at risk, kicks more things we had approved 2 months ago. For them to select the concept that the public was most happy with. We were presented with 3 examples. They went to City Hall, they went to the business community. The only recommendation I had was something that I thought wouldn't actually be a substantial lift or change anything, and I understand that the marketplace commissioners also very, very much support that. And we heard from Ryan Nick as well tonight, who attended public comment, that, you know, we need to make sure that there's a space for public safety officers and responders, so that the public has confidence in going downtown. We talk about pedestrian safety. My constituent was just punched in the back of the head 3 times randomly in a violent attack while she was walking home from dinner on that same Church Street marketplace. And that experience for her changes whether she will even go downtown, and they're talking about moving out of Burlington. They've lived here for 40 years. So when I talk about pedestrian safety, I'm not just talking about bicycles, I'm not just talking about bike lanes, I'm also thinking about how safe people feel downtown. And then additionally, cutting off street traffic, the whole point of reconnecting this 50, 60 years later was so that we could return to a grid, a meaningful grid format, to get buses so that they are not having to constantly cross Church Street back and forth and have Church Street be a loading zone. I'm not against bike lanes or even concepts of one-way streets to limit traffic down some of the side streets. But the practicalities of having a vibrant, economic, thriving hub are just that I just don't see what else we can do to change that. And why streets need to be fully pedestrianized and throw this whole project into risk.
Eric, you.
Yeah, so I echo Councilor Bergman's everything that he had to say. I also agree with Councilor Litwin about the need for people to feel confident and safe actually coming to our downtown. I think regardless of what the street looks like, we can take steps to accomplish that. But what makes me uncomfortable with approving this, even with how you say that we can make adjustments to it in the future, is that at least I believe that we all know that when we approve a design that has double-sided parking and no accommodation for bike lanes, any desire to change it from the community will be met with an even bigger response. You can't, when you give something and then you try to take it away later, there's going to be bigger backlash. I think that, like Councilor Bergman said, we're going off of outdated plans and outdated public sentiment. I think that the tide has been turning, that in these urban cores, that people want a pedestrianized area, and whether obviously these grants and these contracts that we have, if they require vehicular traffic, then so be it if we want to go with the current contracts and grants that we have. But when we need, in my opinion, we need to have accommodations for pedestrian traffic that is safe. And I don't think that in a downtown core, having the current format of the streets provides that. I think we need bike lanes, and we need, yes, sorry. We need these accommodations, and we need less traffic on these streets, and I just don't feel comfortable with what we have in front of us. Sorry, I'm really scatterbrained right now.
Thank you. You know, to me, it seems, I'm hearing, like, Councilor Youngman said, we're hearing from the experts that we're putting funding at risk for this project. We're also hearing there is potential for flexibility in the future, but we're not gonna have a future, especially on the reconnected streets, I guess, if we don't do this project. And in this fiscal environment we find ourselves in right now, it's like, we have money that'll pay for this project. Why wouldn't we move ahead? Even if I understand what Merrick's saying, it might be hard to change it later, but it seems like we need to do this project. And we can't substantially change it. So it seems like we should be approving this, to me. Now, I'm wondering if in the motion, I know G's asking for more information, is there any change to the motion language that you would allow you to recommend this to the council with a caveat of having additional information brought forward on what sort of flexibility, so when it came to the full council, then we could hear that additional information about what flexibility is available, because I think this needs to come to the full council regardless of whether this committee takes action on it today, correct? So is there a way?
Yeah, because we didn't
You know,
approve.
so I mean, I did give my questions to Chapin, and it was late today, so I didn't expect them to be answered tonight.
I have some answers tonight.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't, yeah, but I think that, I do not think that the concept or the proposal needs to be approved or sponsored by the two. Right? And then to go to the council. And I respect the desire of councilors to want to push this forward, to bring that forward. I'm not able, I want to see the information, right? And, you know, I want to see us do the maximum amount within the strictures of the contracts that we have, and those are grant contracts. And, you know, if it comes to a vote and I can see and there's some creative thinking within that, then I could vote for it. So I don't think I'm ready tonight to support an action, to vote for an action from this committee, but I would not think it was foul play for if it was a 2-2 vote. Obviously if it's a 3-1 vote, then you have it, but for you two to be the sponsors of a resolution that went to the council, I think that that's fair. I would hope that you all would do that. If I had the same situation, instead of, you know, somehow trying to argue that I was blocked from doing it. So this doesn't have the weight of the TEUC on it, but I just don't think that, particularly in the area that I mentioned, I suspect that I could go along with the non-fully pedestrianized area, and you know, and I could be convinced on every area except those 2 streets, and perhaps Cherry Street. There are reasons that Leahy did another thing which unfortunately wasn't as good as many of the things he did, but you know, but Bank Street, I don't see it at all, and I just, you know, I just can't get behind it. But you know, I'm not going to say somehow that it would be wrong for you two to bring that forward, and if you have the votes to adopt it.
And just so I'm understanding what I'm very visual. Would you point on this back thing to me?
Sure.
Because, you know,
Sure.
you're suggesting is that bank.
From St. Paul to this bank should
be fully pedestrian.
I would have, but I think bikes could go on it. I think we could probably do something because fully pedestrianized, like Church Street means, no, doesn't mean bikes.
Yeah.
So I could live with a bike lane in the middle of that.
But you're saying no cars
But I
whatsoever.
don't think that there should be car traffic
Stephen or Rob,
here to here.
do you guys know when their next meeting is?
Yes.
When the TEUC is meeting next?
So, yeah, and I would like
They
to
have
say.
a special meeting, they just
cars that are gonna come
tentatively
here
scheduled
can't
for
come over.
July
So
11th.
they're either gonna.
Which would be immediately before the 15th.
They are forcing,
but
you know.
I
We
think-
could revisit the motion after trying to
Well, our
answer
bus
Counselor
depot is
Jean's,
right here.
Counselor Bergman's questions to make it a
July
short.
Yeah,
July 11th is a little
So,
constrained,
you know,
potentially, given
this
what's
is
going on afterward.
So they're gonna go this, no, they're.
yeah,
this-
I mean, I think we can
Buses are
manage
gonna
it the same night as the
Not gonna cross this.
as the Ward 5 MPA ride your bike proposal, but that may be shifting as well.
So.
As you've seen some email traffic.
I think
So,
that this
We have to
traffic.
answer Jean's questions.
Right,
and then
gives us a little
figure
bit
out
of time to
strategy.
answer it. Maybe they can make a quick
So
item and a quick motion that night.
this is sort of a tricky thing. Here, you're gonna be able to get to
Yeah,
Mill
I
Street.
don't think we
So
should have
there's
a vote
that.
tonight.
That's why it's more like I just wanna know why the questions that were.
And so I
raised by-
guess my question then is, could we be compliant with the grant if we were to have one lane of traffic with,
So we need, I need to go to my thing, but that's what I'm looking for. I'm
but are
looking
you,
for some,
are you okay with one lane of traffic?
you know what, I wanna see the creativity that can happen within the context of the contracts. And I'm not ready to go there.
Let me refocus us a little bit
Alright,
and.
it's helpful, I just
suggest-
needed to see visually what.
Yep.
So we're out of time, and I think that one of the ideas that's being floated is that we give some time to have Jean's questions answered. And we will bring this, we will have an opportunity for we're gonna, I mean, I know that I will sponsor it alone if necessary. But I would love it if the committee could sponsor this. And we would have an opportunity to get it on the council agenda for the 15th. At our special meeting on the 11th. We would have an opportunity to potentially sponsor this as a committee.
And I'm open to, you know, continue conversation, because what I've asked for is for you to be really creative in looking at the contracts and the other strictures. When I say contracts, I mean the grants and all of that stuff, and see if we can do something, and if you can propose something that's gonna be close to what I'm looking for my, you know, I cut to my bottom line with those two streets.
So is that acceptable to the committee that we maybe table this?
We're not taking it
Or
action
we'll
tonight.
postpone our decision.
Putting it on the July 11th.
That worked for me.
agenda.
So we just.
I'd like to live to fight another day.
So I don't know if we even need to make a motion of that. We will have it, we will continue this discussion on the 11th with some additional information, but with the intention of bringing this to the full.
And I would just like to say, since Jean is getting to see the creativity, or asking to receive the creativity that, you know, the marketplace commissioners and I have been in contact as well, that, you know, I would like to see reflected in the plan, some proposal for a place for the Howard Center outreach team, the CSOs and everybody to have a hub for our CRT, for example, when they need to quickly respond to an overdose in the neighborhood, have somewhere to be with their equipment out of the rain and the snow. So I would like to see that reflected in the plan, and I hope that that's not anything that would cause your grants in funding, because it doesn't throw into question any street.
I don't know if it's a street connectivity
Yeah,
consideration.
We can talk creatively with the Churchy Marketplace,
Yeah.
and the reality is, it doesn't have to be within the right of way, it could be in an adjacent building, it could be at City Hall. Fundamentally, I do think what you're asking for is an important piece of the downtown safety fabric. Where it fits, we'll continue to talk with partners about how to accomplish.
I mean, I appreciate that, we're talking about a 3-year. Wait, 2 to 3 year wait, and so when you said to me, and I wanna give the room to these nice people here who are waiting for it. You know, we need to worry about the staffing. Like, that's how long it's gonna, for staffing police and CSOs and everything, that's how long it's gonna take us to bring the police department up to staff anyway, so.
I'm going to,
Adjourn us.
I'm gonna terminate this conversation.
Go ahead.
And move on,
Your guys.
to adjournment.
Yeah, that's
Which
great.
is gonna go with the director's report. Because we're out of time, we're out of space. So,
Thank you.
with no further business, I will adjourn us at 7:35. And turn it over to the Charter and Change Committee.
There we go. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, that was a good discussion.
Yes.
Which will be more exciting.
There you go. Thank you, Julia.
Never know.
Thank you, Julia.
Sorry, I got your. Okay.